All right, Ethereum. This is my Devcon 2. The last time I went to Ethereum, Devcon was Devcon 2 in Shanghai. That was 2016. And at that event, I secured $5 million in pledges from a guy called Brandon Kersner, who and his partner Craig, who ended up flying me to South Africa to meet with his family. I stayed at Sol Kersner's amazing billion-dollar estate, or hundreds of millions of dollars estate. They own a whole mountain in Cape Town, and spent a week talking to their business development manager, who was completely clueless on the blockchain. I warned him. I said, listen, if your business development guy doesn't understand the blockchain and Bitcoin, it's going to be pointless for me to talk to him. And sure enough, he didn't. And it became this huge kind of, struggle trying to get the business manager to understand. And at the end of the day, it was like, listen, Mike, we can't guarantee the $5 million, but we'll take it from here. You're going to sign everything over, and you'll be treated right. And I was like, yeah, right. No. So I ended up walking from the deal. Now understand, we were planning to have some of the biggest names. I had the choice of some of the biggest names to be as the face of Foundups Spring 2017 ICO. I'm talking about people like DiCaprio or Morgan Friedman or Bob De Niro. All these individuals, and a lot more, are all very good friends of the Kersners. Every Christmas, they come down to Seoul, to South Africa, where they have a private event to get away from everything and be by themselves and go to the beach and really have, because winter time in South Africa is springtime, right? It's their spring. And so I really like Brandon, I like Craig, but it just wasn't going to work. And I lost my entire team when I returned from South Africa, because the deal didn't happen. Look, I found a very cool looking hat. Special restitution. Someone's probably had, and it's still wet. So let's put this hat up here off the road. Flew out of their truck. Put it right there. Maybe someone will find it. And also I kind of pulled away because I thought this was it. This was my opportunity. This was going to happen and everything else, and it was devastating to me. But hindsight is always 20/20, and probably the best thing that ever happened was the deal to go south, because my father ended up having terminal melanoma cancer, and I basically spent most of 2000 in end of 2017. I ended up having to go deal with that. My father broke his hip, he broke his shoulder. It was just one event after another until his passing in April 4th, 2019. So I needed to basically spend my time with my dad, right? It was his last years, and had this deal come through, ultimately that would have not been much of an option. Look for a place to sit down here in the shade, finish my talk. So hopefully the wind isn't too bad. Anyway, so I am going to Devcon5 in Osaka. I've already booked my places. I actually have room to sleep 8 people. So I'm looking to bring my team over again from Pennsylvania and all over to basically make another run at the argument for funding and getting behind Foundups. The blockchain exists for one very specific reason. The blockchain exists to basically solve our global economic, problem, which is it's built on this infinite vehicle called CAGR that ultimately says that growth is fine, that you could forever drink from the coffee mug of Earth infinitely, consuming its limited resources more and more efficiently, infinitely, without any consequence. Well, guess what? Every crisis facing our planet, and I used to do this in 2010 and 11 when I went to Silicon Valley trying to raise money for Foundups. I would say this. I would say, listen, every crisis facing our planet, right, can be tied to this one thing, right? Which is CAGR. If you can name one crisis, barring pandemics and natural disasters, those are kind of acts of God, right? Then I'll eat my business card. And you know what? No one has ever been able to come up with some sort of, crisis. Climate change, loss of fisheries, loss of forests, loss of all of that is tied to this insatiable desire to take more and more and more, to have that 3% exponential growth every year, that compounded growth, right? That is CAGR, exponential growth, exponential, interest on interest on interest. And I realized that Wall Street wouldn't solve it, so we needed to build a new sandbox. And why not build it on the same protocol as Bitcoin, which we call the blockchain today? I didn't know it was called the blockchain back there. I couldn't get anyone to get behind it. So I finally went to the founders of Bitcoin Magazine. A guy called Matthew N. Wright was the CEO and founder of Bitcoin Magazine in 2011. He's not on Wikipedia. The guy had lots of debt, lots of issues, and he sold the magazine and sold the business, obviously, to Vitalik and Michal, who took it over. But he wasn't the founder of Bitcoin Magazine back in 2011, or he was the founder. Michal and Lisi were not. They were just, part of his venture. And but Michal and Lisi listened over a 2-week period. I kind of told him everything about Foundups, how it would work, and everything else. Provide him what I would say the kind of a what's the word? Template, or best thing is in dressmaking, a pattern for a whole new way to interact on the web, which is on the blockchain, right? And what we've seen with ICOs and everything else. My big issue is they never credited me for my work. They never credited me, say, hey, the work that I, met with Michael Trout played a role in helping us, with a path, right, of what we were aiming to, providing kind of a context to why it needed to be built. So, and I need to be clear, I did not invent Ethereum. Ethereum was not stolen from me. Ethereum is an amazing, unique innovation built on the blockchain. But it is innovation that ultimately utilize the vision and work that I'd spent 2 years working on and explaining why. And this is the why of the blockchain, is because with the blockchain, you can switch out CAGR with something else. And that something else is what I'm coming to Devcon5 and promoting, is CABR, is compounded annual benefit rate. And really CABR is CABR can be measured on anything. CAGR, right, growth. So we can actually take the CAGR equation, change the parameters, the input things for it, and ultimately output CABR. And CABR ultimately is asking 3 questions and measuring those 3 intangibles. Of one is, how is this widget, how is this corporation benefiting the planet, right? Number 2 question they ask is, how is this widget helping the living systems of the planet? And number 3, it's asking, how is this widget sharing and benefiting other human beings? So the planet is important because we share this planet. Living systems, we are a living system. We are not more special than any other living system. And for the most part, we need these other living systems in order to survive ourselves. And finally, we have to be equitable. We have to be looking out for, the folks that ultimately cannot. So those three questions are intangibles. Now the mechanism that's going to crunch this big data and provide the output of this data is OBEY, open AI, open beneficial AI. So AI that basically is developed and trained by the great minds that ask these questions to grab the data, and all of this would be open source. All of this would be open for anyone, right? So, and it would be plugged in. So you could look at someone's total CABR score. You could look at someone's CABR score from last year to this year. CABR is also proof of benefit, right? And imagine the allocation of CABR tokens or CABR coins for that work, for that benefit, right? Imagine being able to access loans and stuff instead of having a CAGR credit rating, which that's what credit rating is. It's your interacting with CAGR, right? Are you a good player in this exponential growth economy? That's what your credit score represents. So imagine a CABR credit score is saying, hey, are you a good person in benefiting the planet? Is what you're doing? Are you transforming, creating permaculture homesteads? Are you living sustainably? Are you driving sustainably? So your CABR score, your proof of benefit score, would be looking at how is the size of your footprint in regards to the planet. So so politicians could be, you could look at a politician and say, wow, is this politician going down or going better? Obviously, if you're supporting companies like big oil and fracking and stuff like that, you're gonna have a negative one. But here's the other side, is once you have a CABR score, you understand the negative CABR score. These companies can then buy themselves out, kind of like a carbon score rating. They can buy themselves out, and that funds would go into the dano, right? The specific dano that deals with that issue. So there are 19 danos, each dealing with specific issue: our forest, our oceans, our medical, our space and science, all these different danos, right? So depending on the score and where they're hurting, so for example, let's say a company has tons of plastic trash on the beach, then ultimately that person could pay out their negative CABR score to a positive one, right? And then that funding can be used for cleanup, can be used for benefiting individuals that are out there themselves doing it. So you could start your own beach cleanup as one person, like the two surfers did, that now has this massive company selling bracelets, okay? Imagine anyone being able to do that, and basically those bracelets, right? This is, it's funny because in 2016, I talked about Beach Boy Anon, right? Hey, what's all this trash? And there's these two Beach Boy surfers who listened to the calling of Beach Boy Anon and actually came up with a solution. Good for you guys. So everything comes down to us getting off CAGR, right? Everything comes down to us creating a new sandbox with a new economy that isn't built on an infinite agent, right? And that's CABR, proof of benefit. My name is Mike Trout. Come to Devcon, all right? Devcon5 in Osaka. It's happening October 8th through the 11th. I'll be there. Let's come, let's talk about it. Let's get involved in saving our planet together.